Great to see everybody. I know we have Representatives Nix and Robinson from this area, so I want to welcome them. We also have the Insurance Commissioner for the state of Florida, Mikey Jaworski, is here. And we've got some very interesting announcements today. So I think a lot of people have seen over the years, various things. I mean, we talk about groceries, we talk about all these things that have been more difficult, and this is going back really 4 or 5 years now. You've seen the run up, really the COVID, the spending, the printing of money, the supply chain, just all these other things contributed to a lot of different things. Well, one of the things that has been the most difficult nationwide has been increases in auto insurance premiums. Florida has had kind of a difficult history of this over the years. Part of its demographics, part of its driving ability and problems on the roads, but part of it was the legal environment where Florida was really a litigation, was considered a litigation hellhole by a lot of folks, and that contributed to consumers having to bear more costs with respect to auto insurance. And so one of the things that we did recently was do major litigation reform in this state. The end of 2022, the beginning of 2023. A lot of people have been talking about doing this for like 20 years, but it's not easy to do. You got to get the legislature to do it, and all you got to do, you drive around the state of Florida, you get on the highways, and what do you see? You see signs for lawyers, right? And the lawyers want to bring lawsuits, and obviously the legal profession over many decades has transformed from a profession to a business. And so they're trying to make money off this stuff, and they obviously want to be able to bring more lawsuits. But we knew that Florida had a problem. I mean, just with homeowners insurance, the state represented 8% of claims nationwide, but accounted for 78% of litigation costs. Well, guess what? I mean, that's going to be something that policyholders are going to end up paying. It's basic economics. So we did this. They've been trying to do it for many, many years. And, sometimes people think, well, you do sign a bill into law like the next day. Well, where's the result? We said it's going to take time to kind of go through the system. And so if you look at what's happened with auto insurance, so in 2024, it was the #1 nationwide consumer staple in terms of inflation. Average increase in America was like 20% in 2024. We don't have the full numbers yet, but I would say in almost every state, you're seeing auto insurance go up. What's happening in Florida? For 2025, the top 5 auto writer insurance groups have averaged 6.5 reduction in rates. And that includes Allstate, 7% decrease, Liberty Mutual, 5%, State Farm, 4.7%. But honestly, a lot of them are filing more and likely to go down even more. So stay tuned for that. So 78% of our auto market are the top 5 companies. And they are seeing, reduction. And part of the reason they're able to do that is because you have seen a decline in litigation expenses almost really immediately from when the 22-23 reforms were put in. That means that they obviously are not having to expend as much on the administrative stuff. And so what ends up happening? Well, Florida, we have different regulations in these different, and so they're private companies. Obviously, they make decisions, but there is a regulatory framework. And we do have consumer protections in this, especially for people with auto insurance policies. So as they submit different rates, and they're entitled to do that as long as it's within the framework, they do look back at years prior to see if companies actually owe any of the policyholders anything. And so Commissioner Jaworski has been working with these companies because given all the money that's been saved with these reforms, now looking back even a couple years, consumers now have an ability or have even a right to be able to get some of these refunds. And so we're able to announce today that with thanks to Commissioner Jaworski, he has secured almost $1 billion in credits for Progressive auto insurance policyholders. And so the savings that we've seen because of the litigation reforms now means they are going to be giving you, and it depends on how long you've been with Progressive. You've been with Progressive this whole time, you're going to get a bigger rebate, and it might be a check, it might be a credit on your bill, but the average across Florida policyholders is going to be a $300 rebate, and that's just for Progressive. And so a commissioner is in negotiations with the other major auto insurers to do similar, and we think a lot of this is going to be very similar. We don't think that there's been a big difference amongst different carriers. So if you're in some of these other, State Farm, all these others, and don't forget the Progressive, this rebate of almost $1 billion, that's on top of, they just filed again, right, for more reduction. So they're 10, 15%, maybe even 20% down once this whole year goes on for their policyholders, and then you're going to end up getting almost $1 billion back with this. And so, and Progressive, they these companies are highly regulated. They had to do an SEC filing, and it says, since Florida's insurance reform was enacted, we've seen lower loss costs on certain types of claims and favorable reserve deployment, and we have experienced strong in Florida personal auto business. And so people want to expand in Florida. It used to be you didn't want to be in Florida. Part of it's demographic, part of it's bad driving, but part of it was legal and litigation. And so you see that. So you're seeing a big decline in all of this with terms of, here's the thing. You would see litigation where the policyholder the dispute would be over like $50,000, and then the lawyer ends up getting like $350,000. Well, why would we want a system that encourages that? And so Florida has done a lot to do it. So I think we'll be, by the end of the year, you'll have the rest of the companies.
Probably, yeah, 1st of January.
By the 1st of January, you're going to have all these. But I don't think there's any reason to think these other companies are any different than Progressive. I think you're going to see rebates. I think you're going to see maybe checks, however they decide to do it. And he wants to negotiate it. Now, there is some regulatory, you can do like a club, but it's better to do carrot and let's just get this out the door for people rather than have to go through some type of protracted litigation. But I think a lot of the companies understand what's going on. So that's a big deal. That's going to be very helpful for folks. And I think that there's going to be more to come. And I think the trend is, because of what's happened with these litigation reforms, litigation expenses are down. That's why they're now filing even more rate reductions, because they see that and they're doing it. So, and it puts the consumer in a good spot, because if Progressive is down 15%, whatever, and you have a different, well, you could try to get, and then you go to there, go the other way. That's really puts the consumer, I think, in a much better spot than they have been in previous years. And I think that they're all going to be, basically, if they want to keep business. I have some people telling me, like, oh my gosh, first time I got declines in auto, I got this and that. A lot of people were happy. Then some people were like, I didn't get a decline. I have the same. And I was like, well, did you shop around? They're like, no. I was like, well, shop around. Oh yeah, you're right. I got it. So I think that that's going to be good news. I think that's going to continue. So that's on the auto, and we're really excited about the prospects there. We also have homeowners insurance in terms of what we've been able to see with that. And like I said, auto insurance was the #1 inflationary. If you look around the country, sometimes you don't, the way it's portrayed, locally, huge increases across the country. In fact, a lot of companies have left California, they've left Midwest. They're not even offering policies in some of these parts of the country. And I think part of it is because they had the approach of, they were going to dictate here, dictate there. No business is forced to do business. Like, they can just decide not to, right, if it's not a good environment. So they've not done well. So we've been able to do the major reforms with respect to homeowners insurance. And so the result has been, we now have, let's see, I got these here. Okay. So if I don't quote the statistics right, someone will say something. So as of the end of September, So again, it's a regulated private companies. They could do, but there's certain regulations. So they file these requests and they have to justify it under the law. 150 residential policy companies have done 150 filings for either rate decreases or 0% increases. And so in 2024, we had 33 companies. Since January 24, 33 companies have filed for a rate decrease. 46 companies have requested no change or 0%. One of the largest insurers in the state, Peninsula, requested the largest decrease for the company in modern history, 8.4% for homeowners premiums, including even 12% for condo owners, which has been a very difficult issue. You know, we had to get the legislature to change to try to keep people in their condos because they were being driven out. So we were able to do that, which is really good. So the 30-day average that Mike's office is getting for homeowners rates is down 1.3%. 180-day average fell. A year ago it was still going up. Now it's down over the last 6 months all in, and it keeps getting more where they're doing more and more reductions. In 2024, Florida had the lowest increase in the nation for homeowners. So just understand what's going on around the country. I mean, it costs a lot more to replace a roof today than it did 5 years ago. That's not limited to Florida. That's true everywhere because of the inflation. And so our average increase statewide in 2024 was 1%, and it was 15, 20, 30% in some other parts of the country. We now have, since these reforms were passed, 17 new companies are now operating in Florida, and so they're bringing capital in and they're offering policies. That's brought in more than $57.4 million in new policyholder to support additional growth in the state's property market. If you actually see in Florida, more people now are on private insurance than they were 5 years ago. Less people are on Citizens, which is the last resort, backed by the state. And honestly, like if something really bad happened, people say, well, maybe the taxpayer would bail out. But even short of that, Citizens under the law has the right to assess every policy in the state. So you could just be like renting a condo in Sarasota and you could get assessed by Citizens. I mean, it's incredible. So we obviously don't want that to happen. I mean, can you imagine what it would be like to get an assessment for something you have nothing to do with? And so we obviously want to prevent that from happening. Now, knock on wood, I mean, there is a storm kind of in the Caribbean, south of Cuba and Jamaica. Most people are saying there's not going to be any impact in Florida, but who knows, right? I mean, these things can shift, so we're watching. But we are getting towards, as you get into the end of October, we're still in hurricane season. The chance of having a major after that goes down a lot. Doesn't mean it's 100%. But if we do get through this without any major impacts, I think Mike's assessment is that you're going to see these companies continue to do rate decrease in their filings. And when you have these new companies, you have an ability to try to get a better bargain. So these are difficult issues because there's a lot of moving parts, and our state just has to deal with certain things, whether it's the auto situation, dealing with the demographics, dealing with the driving, or when you're dealing with homeowners, dealing with the risk. And being a peninsula that's sticking out in the middle of a tropical part of the country, you are just going to have less risk from a storm if you're somewhere in the interior of the country. Now, they have other risks, tornadoes, whatever. California, they have things like earthquakes. We have the hurricane risk. And so when you have a period where you've had 6 majors in 7 years, that's something that obviously is significant. But I would say, we had 2 majors last year, 3 total. If you were 2 years ago and someone said that was going to happen, everyone would have said that there would be no more, that every company would go under, that it would be all government, and that's what people would have predicted. And that's been the opposite that's happened. You're seeing these rate filings go down, even though you had 3 storms last year. And so that's important progress. Now, on both of those were, and the only reason that that's happening is because of the litigation reforms. That was what was causing these costs. Now, the inflation contributed, the risk contributed, but those are things that are outside the control of government, although some people think we control the hurricanes too. I can tell you, if I had that on-off switch, that would be something that I would utilize and keep that dialed down. That would be an easy decision for me. But the litigation reforms has been really significant. And I think Mike will talk more about what he sees kind of in these markets, but the movement has been positive. Here's the thing though, we saw the 24 results where we were the lowest increase in the country. We saw more companies indicate they wanted to do business in Florida. We started to see some of the decreases, both commercially and residentially. We saw positive movement in auto. And last legislative session, you had a movement by the leadership in the Florida House to reverse what was done. And I don't know why that would have been done. The own analysis that produced some of the bills said that it would lead to a spike in homeowners insurance premiums. Why would we want to be doing that? I understand there's lawyers who want that. I get that. But you didn't get elected to represent lawyers. You got elected to represent your constituents. And so that crashed and burned, the attempt to reverse those reforms. The Senate said they weren't going to do anything with it, even if it passed the House. And I obviously would not have let it go into law. But these results that you're seeing, you're getting $1 billion back from an auto insurance company because of those reforms. That's the only reason that is happening. You're going to get more money back for people that are in other policies other than Progressive. That is only because of those litigation reforms. So that was very misguided to try to do that. It didn't work. It crashed and burned. But going forward, I think we got to make sure that we continue going on the course where you've seen measurable results. And also with that in mind, when we were, it was hard to get all the reforms done. There was a lot in the legislature initially, a couple years back before this, that just wouldn't do it. But we tried to do whatever we could to be helpful. So one of the things we did was we did the My Safe Florida Home program. So My Safe Florida Home allows you to apply to do home hardening improvements, and you can get a matching grant. And the reason why we were doing that is because when you do that, one, it's better for you and your property and hopefully less damage if you have a storm, but it also leads to a measurable reduction in insurance premiums. I think it was the average person who went through the My Safe Florida Home improvements qualified for an average of $900 in savings in a given year, which is good. Some had more, some had less, but that was the average. And so we did it. It was very successful. So then we did it again, and I think we did it maybe a few years leading in. So then we got to 2024, the budget, and it had money in it, and people got on a waiting list because the funds ran out. So you ended up having these hurricanes. And so my view is like, listen, you can add or not as much as you want if you're the legislature, but if you've told people to sign up for this, they're on a waiting list, they want to make improvements to their homes, shouldn't you fund at least the waiting list? Like if you don't want to keep doing it, at least do that. So in January, I called a special session of the legislature. We did for immigration, illegal immigration enforcement. We wanted to do the condos. We wanted to help with hurricane victims from Helene and Milton, and then we wanted to do My Safe Florida Home. And they basically, just said, they didn't want to do the hurricane, they didn't want to do My Safe Florida Home, and they did not want to do condos. They eventually did condos. They were forced to do litigation. It was really the House leadership. They were forced to do illegal immigration. They wanted to actually make Florida a sanctuary state. I mean, can you imagine that? Literally preventing the governor from doing anything about illegal immigration. Like none of the stuff that's happened would have happened. And we've led the way not only in arrests and helping ICE, but in terms of removals, just our deportation operations, you're talking about thousands and thousands of people that in other states, they may have ended up just being released because DHS didn't have the capacity. So we've really helped there. But my view on the My Safe Florida Home is if they're on the waiting list, we're January of 2025 at the time, why not clear the waiting list, at least in the areas where you had damage from Milton and Helene? Those folks can then make the repairs And then if we ended up having storms in 2025, then they would be protected from that. But that wasn't done. So then they did do in the regular budget, they did do some money, but they put some restrictions on it. So there are people on the waiting list who were approved for this, who now these funds, are not able to necessarily be reached because they put limitations. So my view is like, look, you made this promise. You told people to sign up. So let's at least clear the waiting list and let's fund this. Now, knock on wood, we'll see. Maybe this area, isn't going to have any impacts from this tropical season. I think that'd be great. I think you deserve a break from it after what you went through last year. So hopefully, but man, why don't we do that? So I think my Safe Florida Home, it's not like it's, there's a lot of different things that happen, but this is something that has made a difference. And especially when people were really struggling during those many years, if we can help to make their property better, but then also get them rebates, that's something that I think we need to do. So hopefully we'll be able to get that done in the upcoming year. But what I want to do is make sure that people have that so that they can finish the improvements in time for next hurricane season. To drag it out, I don't think makes a lot of sense. And so that is an important thing that we do to be able to bring relief. So all told, I'm really excited about this announcement with Progressive. I think people being able to, we're so used to going to like the grocery store and like sticker shock or this or that, to actually get money back. That's a really, really good thing. And it's attributed to the reforms that have been enacted in Florida. And we want to see, I know Mike's going to work with all the other companies to get that statewide across all our carriers. I don't think there's a single carrier that's not going to probably be triggered, where these refunds aren't going to be triggered based on what's happened in terms of saving. So you end up having Progressive folks, policyholders, that's happening. More will happen. But then we also think they're going to be further reducing rates as we get through the balance of this year and into next year. So all told, that's great progress. So Mike, you want to come up and expand?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Governor, for your continued leadership in this space. And I would be remiss without also thanking Florida's Chief Financial Officer, Blaise Ingoglia, as well as the Senate leadership, past President, former President Pasadomo, current President Albritton, and future President Jim Boyd have been steadfast defenders of the reforms that now Floridians are seeing the benefit of. And I can tell you personally, day in and day out, it is not always the most pleasant experience to be the one that is deciding whether or not to raise rates. But the news over the past few years has been tremendous, and it is accelerating and it is increasing due to the reforms that were put in place. The $1 billion, I want to commend Progressive particularly for coming to the table first to work with us, to negotiate this, to get dollars back to consumers faster, to avoid those statutory triggers and avoid a fight. Everybody here has just done the right thing. And we look forward, as we're talking to other companies now, to begin that same process. And all these discounts, as the governor mentioned in that space, that reduction, that credit back to consumers, is on top of an unprecedented period in Florida's history where we are seeing rates go down in the auto space at a pace we have not seen in decades. And that is directly attributable to the litigation reforms. What Florida did in this space, it did not eliminate the option for consumers to litigate against their insurer. It restored rationality to that space in the same manner that exists currently in 49 other states. It was tremendously difficult to get through the legislature. The governor worked for multiple years with the Office of Insurance Regulation, with others, to move that ball forward. I don't know if there's another governor that could have done it, frankly, but it has been a tremendous success. And at the same time, we're not just leaving consumers in the lurch. We are moving forward on, at the same time that tort reform was passed, insurer accountability was passed. And so that includes tremendous new resources for the office that we have put to use in ensuring that insurers are acting appropriately following claims. So far this year, we have closed over 100 investigations into insurer activity. We've closed dozens of market conduct examinations. We've fined insurers more than in the past decade in this past year. And we have returned over, on top of these other things, where we've identified issues where consumers should have been paid more or a different amount. We've returned that in the form of restitution to consumers to ensure that they are made whole. When a catastrophe strikes, it is often the worst day of a consumer's life. When they've lost their home, when they have nowhere to place their family, when they're not sure about the future. And the promise of insurance is that they will be there to make those consumers whole. And we're going to continue to be on the back end making sure that those companies are doing the right thing. We'll continue to ramp up accountability smartly so it doesn't scare off competition, but ensures that we have a vibrant marketplace that our consumers can rely on. On the property front, the governor mentioned Florida had the lowest increase in the cost of property insurance in the country last year. And I expect it to be a similar trend this year. And that, again, is directly attributable to tort reform. At the same time, imagine a situation 4 years ago where we had 3 major hurricane strikes on the state of Florida at the same time of having the lowest rate increase in the country, where other states such as Nebraska are increasing by 2-fold, 3-fold. It truly is an amazing testament to this hard journey of doing the right thing to fix this marketplace, not just for those of us who live here now, but for our kids, for other people that move here in the future, for everyone else. It is a long-term, never-ending story in some respects to keep these markets vibrant, but the tort reforms stand among those that have happened in the past, such as the creation of the CAT Fund, such as Citizens, such as the public model, such as all these things that Florida has done ahead of other states to handle this problem. And so I'm hopeful that as we move into this next legislative session that we can talk about, I think the governor has expressed in the past, he's more than happy to talk with the legislature about things that move the ball forward in insurance for consumers. He mentioned My Safe Florida Home already, and some other things. I'm hopeful that we can move the ball forward on things that will meaningfully add value to the consumers in the state and move past this trial bar issue that exists among bad acting attorneys in the space. That $1 billion, much of it that is now going to the pockets of consumers, would have been going to those attorneys' wallets. And that is the bottom line. And so we'll continue to see that success. We'll continue to see the good news emerge. I'm very optimistic about reinsurance, which is somewhat a complicated space, but it's essentially insurance for insurance companies. Florida is heavily reliant on reinsurers for our catastrophe risk. I expect that market to show continued signs of improvement following this year, which will lower the cost in a rapid way for all consumers of property insurance in the state. And so I want to just thank everyone again. Thank you, Governor. Thank you to the House, to the Senate, who have stood by and kept these reforms in place. And I hope we can continue that trend and do great things for Floridians.
Great. And so the reinsurance, because I didn't mention that, it was down for after June. What was it, down like 6%, 10%? 10%. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, this is just, these companies have to buy reinsurance, right? And so when reinsurance spikes, and again, it's not just like, the reinsurance is much more than just Florida, but Florida plays a huge role in reinsurance. And because of the reforms, the reforms that were done at the end of 22, the reinsurance they said was going to go up a lot more. It still went up. But when they saw the reforms, the increases were less than what they had thought. Now you're starting to see decreases, and likely we'll continue to see more of those decreases, which just makes it more economical to be able to offer different policies. So very complicated subject, especially when you have a very complicated market like Florida. But those trends are undeniable, and I don't know what share off the top of my head Progressive has of the auto market in Florida, but $1 billion is significant, and if these other companies are doing something similar, that's going to be a lot of breath of fresh air. And as Mike said, do you want that refunded to you as a policyholder or funneled to lawyers and put in? I mean, like, is that even a debate? I mean, of course, what we're doing is the right thing to be able to get done. So thanks for everybody that's been involved in it, and thanks for Mike for leaning in and getting the negotiation done. And I know hopefully over the coming weeks and months we'll have more great news in terms of some of these companies also doing the refunds for their consumers. All right, we got any questions?
Any issues with Chad Cronster and the testing scandal that's going on over at HCSO?
I am not up to date on that, so I'll reserve comment.
Governor DeSantis, I was going to ask, how do you think working with Senator Jim Boyd as Senate President will help, especially since his background is based so much on insurance?
Well, I think Jim's been a great ally to our administration. I think he's done a great job representing the people of this region. And on this issue, he probably knows as much or more than anybody in the Florida Senate. And when all this stuff was being pushed earlier this year to unravel the hard work, I mean, he was very much steadfast against doing that because he understands the issues and he saw the trends that were happening, and the worst thing you could do is reverse the trends. And it was interesting, when we did the reforms, we didn't want to be in a situation where, like California, they're leaving, right? The companies leave. They're leaving other states. And because then the consumer, if you only have one option, you have your defense against prices rising is a competitive market, right, as a consumer. Because, if you only have one monopolies doing it, well, then it's hard. So that's your defense. And we didn't want to be in that situation. Well, we saw the companies were interested when we did the reforms, but some of them said, well, we're worried that it may get reversed. I'm like, how is it going to get? I did not honestly believe they would try to do this earlier this year. I was really surprised. But I think now that really crashed and burned, I think people have even more confidence. So I think that we've had a lot of companies come in, but I think you could even see even more attraction to the Florida market. And look, we can't, all the other stuff with Mother Nature we can't control. But the reality is we had 10 years where we had no impacts, right, for hurricanes. And if we can get through this year, that'd be great. But man, imagine if we get on a run. We'll prepare to but if you get on a run on that, I mean, you're going to be in really good shape with all that. So I think Jim's been great on this and on a lot of other issues, and he's going to do a really good job as the president of the Florida Senate. Yes.
Can you comment on the Schools of Hope legislation and some Sarasota County school board members' concerns that will impact negatively district resources?
I don't think that's true. So I think what he's talking about, we did the Schools of Hope to really attract charter operators in areas that are very poor performing. And one of the aspects of that was if there's excess space in these school buildings, that the charter operator could use that excess space and then do a program. So we brought Success Academy down from New York City. So Success Academy, now Florida is favorable to school choice. New York is not, right? So Success Academy has gotten into the city in very difficult areas, going against the unions, going against the politicians, and they've had really significant success. And so when we started talking to them about coming, their view is, we're going where people say it can't be done. That's what they want to do. And so being able to provide operators like that some existing infrastructure that's not being utilized, makes economic sense, but it also helps attract folks to come in and do it. So I understand, why they're saying that. I don't think ultimately the critique is valid, and I think it's going to make a real difference. So they're starting in Miami, but their goal is to go to as many spots around Florida as they can in area. Now, we have more school choice than anybody in the country. So we have 500,000 plus kids on private scholarship, 400,000 plus in charter programs. Within school districts, we have over probably 750,000 at a minimum that are exercising choice options within their school district. When I was growing up, wherever your school was, I was Dunedin, I went to Dunedin High School. And that was that. There may have been some limited magnet, but it really has gone much different. So that puts the parent in a great spot because regardless of income level, you have an option for scholarship. You have an option for charter. And these charter school folks, they're not entitled to any students, right? They have to convince parents that you should send them to the charter school. And we have some of the best charter schools in the country as a result of that. But if those schools aren't doing the job, then parents are going to choose to go elsewhere. And I think what our school districts have had to do is they've had to innovate. They've had to offer more choices to parents. Miami-Dade, top performing urban school district in America, they have 70+% of their students do not attend their local neighborhood school. They're in magnet programs, they're in charter, they're in all these other things. So I think that formula has proven to work. And interestingly, if you take just our charter population, which is over 400,000 students, that'd be more students than probably a third to a half of U.S. states would have in their total K-12 system, because Florida's obviously a big state. And the charter students, are disproportionately low income compared to Florida as a whole. If you took their performance, they would be one of the top 5, if they were their own state, they would be one of the top 5 performing states in this country on these charter programs. And that's before you even have like a Success Academy. So I think it's going to work out well, and I think it's just going to provide more opportunities for folks, but particularly for people, even with all our choice, even if all the success with the charter, there's still kind of a view. It's like, well, some areas you're never gonna get. And I think Success Academies, their view is no, we can do well anywhere. Kids just need the right tools to be able to realize their God-given potential, and that's what we want to see for everybody. Yes.
They do take over a public school that doubles as a hurricane evacuation center, that they won't be giving those services.
No. So, listen, when you're in Florida, you're on the team when it comes to the hurricane stuff, right? Like, we're just not gonna like you will be on the team. That's not gonna be an issue. We will make that between Kevin Guthrie and Stasi Kamutsis and everybody. That is not going to be an issue. Now, hopefully, we don't need to go down that road. It's been nice thus far to be, we're in the last third of October, and we've had nothing even close. You got to knock on wood, because we may have to prepare. Something may happen, in the balance of the season. But no, we've created a very good culture here in Florida that when these things hit, listen, this area, got hit, Helene, which was kind of crazy. It was so far off the coast and did so much damage with the surge, and particularly as you go further north from here, and then to have Milton right on the back. Most parts of this country would have never been able to bounce back as good. I know there's still stuff to do, don't get me wrong, but this is, honestly, I went to a charity event in Longboat Key a couple months ago. I knew everything that had happened, but I'm seeing new construction. I'm seeing nice beach. It's just a different mindset. And so we kind of understand these are things that we got to contend with. We do a lot to prepare, overwhelming response, and then try to get people back on their feet as soon as possible. There are parts of this country that they get hit and they never come back. Heck, even in Florida that used to be, when Andrew hit Homestead, it was a devastating storm, no doubt, but compare how Panama City has responded to Michael in I came in 2019, we were doing a lot of the stuff. It hit in 2018 to Andrew. I remember I was in college playing baseball. We're down playing. They had a stadium there, because they wanted to have, they may have even had spring training at one point, or they wanted to attract it. And this is almost 10 years later, and it was just it was dead. Now, they've done a lot of good things since then, and I think particularly recently, I've been impressed with what they've done. But that was a long road. You didn't have the infrastructure in place. You didn't have the same response. You talk to people who were in that area after Andrew, it was almost like a war zone in terms of no power, not a lot of law and order. It really was crazy. Now it's just much different in terms of how you do that. And so I think people, that's not just me saying we're just going to get this done. I obviously got to lead. There's certain things I have to do, and we've done a lot with the power to have everything staged and get that on. Search and rescue. We do different things with the bridge. We rebuild the bridges quickly and all this stuff. We're happy to do all that. But you've got people at all levels. You got people in local law enforcement. You got people in local EM. You got charities that get involved in this. The school system. All of this across the board. We really do a good job of coming together as a state, and that's just the culture that has been created here over the years. And so it's not going to be an issue. We will make sure that we got what we need in that regard. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Great to see y'all.